In the dim glow of the television screen, Lance Preston's smile was as bright as ever, his eyes sparkling with a mixture of charisma and confidence. He was the epitome of the modern-day explorer, fearlessly venturing into the unknown in pursuit of truth and adventure. As the host of the hit ghost-hunting reality TV show, Spectral Encounters, Lance had built a reputation for debunking the supernatural with wit and charm. Tonight, however, would be unlike any other investigation. The crew had received a tip about an abandoned psychiatric hospital shrouded in mystery and tragedy. Rumors of hauntings and restless spirits had plagued the dilapidated building for decades, and Lance saw it as the perfect opportunity to showcase his expertise. With cameras rolling and anticipation in the air, Lance addressed the audience with his trademark confidence. "Tonight, my friends, we embark on our most thrilling adventure yet," he declared, his voice carrying a hint of excitement. "Join us as we unlock the secrets of the past and shed light on the darkness that haunts these halls." But behind Lance's bravado lurked a hint of skepticism. Despite his years of experience, he remained steadfast in his belief that there was a rational explanation for every ghostly tale. Little did he know that tonight, in the shadowy corridors of the abandoned hospital, his skepticism would be put to the ultimate test. The abandoned psychiatric hospital loomed ominously in the moonlight, its crumbling facade a testament to years of neglect and decay. As the crew of Spectral Encounters arrived at the deserted institution, a palpable sense of unease settled over them like a heavy fog. Lance Preston, the show's charismatic host, led the way, his confidence unwavering despite the eerie atmosphere. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay. As they stepped out of their van, the sound of their footsteps echoing off the walls of the forsaken building. Broken windows stared back at them like empty eye sockets, while ivy snaked its way up the cracked walls, reclaiming the structure inch by inch. Introductions were made as the crew gathered their equipment, each member wearing a mixture of excitement and trepidation on their faces. There was Sarah, the intrepid camerawoman with a penchant for the supernatural, and Jake, the skeptical sound technician who preferred to rely on facts rather than superstition. As they prepared to enter the hospital, Lance addressed the camera with his trademark charm. "Welcome, my friends, to our latest adventure," he declared, his voice carrying over the desolate landscape. "Tonight, we delve into the heart of darkness in search of answers long buried beneath the rubble." But as they crossed the threshold into the abandoned asylum, a sense of foreboding washed over them like a wave. The once bustling hallways now lay silent and empty, the only sound the distant rustle of leaves and the occasional creak of the floorboard. With cameras rolling and nerves on edge, the crew ventured deeper into the bowels of the hospital, their footsteps echoing off the walls like whispers in the night. Little did they know that what awaited them within those shadowy corridors would challenge their beliefs and push them to the brink of madness. The crew's equipment setup resembled something out of a sci-fi movie, a mishmash of high-tech gadgets and antiquated relics designed to capture the unseen. Sarah, the camerawoman, hoisted a bulky camera onto her shoulder, its lens gleaming in the dim light. Jake, the sound technician, tinkered with a collection of EVP recorders, their tiny screens flickering to life with static. Lance, ever the perfectionist, oversaw the operation with a keen eye, his hands moving deftly as he adjusted the settings on the night vision goggles. "We need to be prepared for anything," he insisted, his voice tinged with a hint of urgency. "The slightest sound or shadow could be our key to unlocking the truth." As the crew fiddled with their equipment, the air crackled with anticipation, each member bracing themselves for the unknown. The cameras were positioned strategically throughout the hospital, their lenses trained on every corner and crevice in hopes of capturing something otherworldly. The EVP recorders hummed softly in the background, their sensitive microphones poised to pick up even the faintest whisper of a ghostly voice. And through the night vision goggles, the darkness took on a surreal quality, casting everything in shades of green and gray. With their equipment in place and their nerves on edge, the crew prepared to embark on their investigation, unaware of the horrors that awaited them in the depths of the abandoned hospital. For as they would soon discover, some things were better left unseen. Lance Preston's insistence on debunking any alleged paranormal activity was as unwavering as the steel resolve in his eyes. He approached each investigation with the skepticism of a seasoned investigator, determined to uncover the truth behind the veil of superstition and fear. As the crew explored the abandoned hospital, Lance's keen eye scrutinized every shadow and sound, searching for logical explanations where others saw only the supernatural. "We can't jump to conclusions," he cautioned, his voice calm but firm. "There's always a rational explanation for these things." Even as his crew members whispered of strange noises and unexplained sightings, Lance remained steadfast in his belief that there was a logical explanation for every phenomenon. He pored over the footage from their cameras, analyzing every frame for signs of tampering or trickery. But as the night wore on and the evidence mounted, even Lance began to feel the tendrils of doubt creeping into his mind. The EVP recorders picked up voices that seemed to defy explanation, and the night vision goggles revealed fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures lurking in the darkness. Still, Lance refused to let fear cloud his judgment. He pressed on, determined to uncover the truth, no matter how unsettling it might be. For he knew that in the end, it was not the unknown that he feared, but the crew's initial exploration of the hospital's corridors and rooms was like stepping into a labyrinth of forgotten nightmares. With cameras rolling and nerves on edge, they ventured deeper into the bowels of the abandoned asylum, their footsteps echoing off the walls like whispers in the night. Sarah, the intrepid camerawoman, led the way, her camera lens capturing every crumbling wall and shattered window with meticulous detail. Jake, the skeptical sound technician, followed closely behind, his ears attuned to the slightest creak or groan of the ancient building. As they moved through the deserted corridors, the air grew thick with the scent of decay, the musty odor clinging to their clothes like a shroud. The walls were adorned with peeling paint and faded wallpaper, remnants of a time long since forgotten. With each step, the tension in the air grew palpable, a sense of foreboding hanging over them like a dark cloud. They passed through doorways that led to empty rooms, their contents scattered and broken as if ransacked by some unseen force. But as they pressed on, their resolve unbroken, they began to sense a shift in the atmosphere. Shadows danced in the corners of their vision, and strange noises echoed through the halls, sending shivers down their spines. Despite their growing unease, the crew pressed on, determined to uncover the truth behind the hospital's haunted reputation. Little did they know that what awaited them within those shadowy corridors would push them to the brink of madness and beyond. As the crew delved deeper into the abandoned hospital, subtle signs of paranormal activity began to manifest themselves, sending shivers down their spines and setting their nerves on edge. It started with the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the empty corridors, despite the fact that they were the only ones present. Sarah, the camerawoman, exchanged a nervous glance with Jake, the sound technician, but they said nothing, their senses on high alert. Then came the flickering lights, casting eerie shadows on the walls as if dancing to some unseen rhythm. Lance, ever the skeptic, dismissed it as faulty wiring or the remnants of a bygone era, but even he couldn't deny the chill that ran down his spine at the sight. As they continued their exploration, the signs of paranormal activity only grew more pronounced. Doors slammed shut of their own accord, their hinges groaning in protest, as if pushed by some unseen force. Objects shifted and moved without explanation, as if guided by an invisible hand. But perhaps most unsettling of all were the whispers that seemed to linger in the air, faint and indistinct yet unmistakably present. Sarah swore she heard her name whispered in the darkness, while Jake claimed to have felt a cold breath on the back of his neck. Despite their best efforts to rationalize away the strange occurrences, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that unseen eyes followed their every move. And as the night wore on and the signs of paranormal activity grew more pronounced, they realized that they were no longer in control of their own destiny. Lance Preston, the charismatic host of spectral encounters, maintained his dismissive attitude towards the increasingly unsettling occurrences within the abandoned hospital. Despite the crew's growing unease and the mounting evidence of paranormal activity, Lance remained steadfast in his belief that there was a rational explanation for everything they encountered. As doors slammed shut and unexplained whispers echoed through the corridors, Lance waved them off with a casual flick of his hand. "It's just the wind," he insisted, his voice betraying a hint of impatience. "Or maybe a draft from one of those broken windows." When Sarah, the camerawoman, pointed out the flickering lights and the shadows that seemed to move of their own accord, Lance chuckled dismissively. "Probably just faulty wiring," he said with a smirk. "Nothing to get worked up about." Even as the signs of paranormal activity grew more pronounced, Lance refused to entertain the possibility that they were dealing with anything other than natural phenomena. He reassured the crew with false bravado, masking his own growing unease beneath a veneer of confidence. But behind his dismissive attitude lurked a seed of doubt, a nagging voice in the back of his mind that whispered of things beyond his understanding. And as the night wore on and the hauntings grew more intense, Lance found himself grappling with the realization that perhaps some mysteries were better left unsolved. As the night deepened, so did the intensity of the paranormal experiences encountered by the crew. What began as subtle whispers and flickering lights escalated into a torrent of unexplainable phenomena that sent shivers down their spines and tested the limits of their sanity. It started innocently enough, with doors slamming shut and objects moving of their own accord. But soon, the hospital seemed to come alive with a malevolent energy, as if the very walls themselves were watching and waiting. Sarah, the fearless camerawoman, captured it all on film. Shadowy figures darting in and out of doorways, their forms twisted and contorted in agony. Jake, the skeptical sound technician, recorded the eerie sounds that seemed to emanate from the very depths of the building. Whispers that chilled the blood and cries of anguish that echoed through the empty corridors. Even Lance, the charismatic host of spectral encounters, couldn't deny the mounting evidence of the supernatural. His confidence wavered as the night wore on, his rational explanations crumbling in the face of the inexplicable. But it was when they reached the hospital's abandoned morgue that things took a truly sinister turn. The air grew thick with the stench of decay as they stepped into the cold, sterile room, the darkness swallowing them whole. And then, they saw it. A flicker of movement in the shadows, a whisper of a voice that sent chills down their spines. As they watched in horror, the walls seemed to close in around them, trapping them in a nightmare from which there was no escape. But even in the face of unimaginable terror, the crew refused to give up hope. With cameras rolling and nerves on edge, they pressed on, determined to uncover the truth behind the hospital's haunted past, no matter the cost. As the night wore on and the intensity of the paranormal experiences escalated, a palpable sense of fear and discomfort settled over the crew like a suffocating blanket. What had started as cautious skepticism had transformed into outright terror as they confronted the reality of the hospital's malevolent inhabitants. Sarah, the once fearless camerawoman, now trembled at the slightest sound, her hands shaking as she struggled to keep the camera steady. Jake, the skeptical sound technician, clutched his EVP recorder like a lifeline, his eyes darting nervously from shadow to shadow. Even Lance, the charismatic host of spectral encounters, couldn't hide his growing unease. His trademark confidence had given way to a mask of fear as he grappled with the realization that the hauntings were far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. With each passing moment, the darkness seemed to press in on them, suffocating and oppressive. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper in the wind, sent shivers down their spines, a constant reminder of their precarious situation. But it was the feeling of being watched that unnerved them the most, the sensation of unseen eyes following their every move. They could feel the weight of the hospital's dark history bearing down on them, threatening to swallow them whole. Despite their growing fear, the crew pressed on, driven by a mixture of determination and desperation. They knew that they were teetering on the edge of something unimaginable, something that defied rational explanation. And as they faced the horrors that lurked within the hospital's shadowy corridors, they knew that their lives would never be the same again. Despite the escalating intensity of the paranormal events, Lance Preston, the charismatic host of spectral encounters, persisted in his attempts to rationalize away the inexplicable occurrences. With each new manifestation of the supernatural, he clung to his skepticism like a lifeline, refusing to let fear cloud his judgment. As doors slammed shut and whispers echoed through the empty corridors, Lance was quick to offer logical explanations. "It's just the wind," he insisted, his voice tinged with a hint of desperation. "Or maybe the building settling." When Sarah, the camerawoman, captured footage of shadowy figures darting in and out of doorways, Lance dismissed it as a trick of the light. "It's probably just a reflection," he said with forced confidence. Deep down, beneath his facade of skepticism, Lance knew that his rational explanations were wearing thin. The fear in the eyes of his crew members mirrored his own, a silent testament to the growing realization that they were no longer in control of their own fate. Still, Lance pressed on, determined to maintain his composure in the face of the unknown. For he knew that to succumb to fear would be to admit defeat, and he was not yet ready to surrender to the darkness that lurked within the abandoned hospital's shadowy corridors. As the night deepened and the tension reached its peak, the crew of spectral encounters found themselves faced with undeniable evidence of supernatural activity that shattered even the staunchest of skeptics. What had begun as subtle whispers and flickering lights had escalated into a full-blown assault on their senses, leaving them reeling in disbelief. It started innocently enough, with doors slamming shut and objects moving of their own accord. But as they pressed on, determined to uncover the truth behind the hospital's haunted reputation, the manifestations grew more pronounced, more sinister. Sarah, the intrepid camerawoman, captured it all on film. Shadowy figures that seemed to materialize out of thin air, their forms twisted and contorted in agony. Jake, the skeptical sound technician, recorded the eerie sounds that echoed through the empty corridors. Whispers that chilled the blood and cries of anguish that sent shivers down their spines. Even Lance Preston, the charismatic host of spectral encounters, couldn't deny the mounting evidence of the supernatural. His rational explanations crumbled in the face of the inexplicable, his confidence shattered like glass. And then, they reached the hospital's abandoned morgue, the epicenter of the paranormal activity. The air grew thick with the stench of decay as they stepped into the cold, sterile room, the darkness swallowing them whole. And there, in the depths of the morgue, they saw a flicker of movement in the shadows, a whisper of a voice that sent chills down their spines. As they watched in horror, the walls seemed to close in around them, trapping them in a nightmare from which there was no escape. In that moment, the crew knew that they were no longer dealing with the realm of the natural, but something far more sinister and inexplicable. They were face to face with the true horrors that lurked within the abandoned hospital's shadowy corridors, and there was no denying the undeniable evidence of the supernatural that surrounded them. In the dimly lit corridors of the abandoned hospital, the crew of spectral encounters found themselves thrust into terrifying encounters with shadowy figures and disembodied voices that defied all rational explanation. What had once seemed like a simple investigation had descended into a nightmare of unimaginable proportions, leaving them teetering on the edge of sanity. It started innocuously enough, with fleeting glimpses of movement in the corner of their vision. Dark shapes that seemed to dart in and out of doorways, disappearing before they could be fully comprehended. But as the night wore on and the hauntings grew more intense, these shadowy figures became more pronounced, more malevolent. Sarah, the fearless camerawoman, captured it all on film. Silhouettes that seemed to materialize out of thin air, their forms twisted and contorted in agony. No matter how hard she tried to rationalize what she saw, the evidence was undeniable, staring back at her from the screen in stark black and white. Jake, the skeptical sound technician, recorded the eerie sounds that echoed through the empty corridors. Whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves, their words unintelligible yet filled with an otherworldly malice. Each sound sent shivers down his spine, a constant reminder of the horrors that lurked just beyond the reach of his understanding. And then, there were the voices. Disembodied whispers that seemed to echo from the very depths of the hospital, their words carrying with them a sense of dread that chilled the blood. Sarah swore she heard her name whispered in the darkness, while Jake claimed to have felt a cold breath on the back of his neck, despite there being no one there. As the crew faced these terrifying encounters head-on, they realized that they were no longer dealing with the realm of the natural, but something far more sinister and inexplicable. They were face to face with the true horrors that lurked within the abandoned hospital's shadowy corridors, and there was no denying the terror that gripped them in its icy embrace. As the paranormal encounters escalated, Lance Preston, the charismatic host of Spectral Encounters, found himself engulfed in a whirlwind of disbelief and panic as his rational explanations crumbled before his very eyes. What had begun as confident skepticism now gave way to a creeping sense of dread, threatening to consume him whole. With each new manifestation of the supernatural, Lance's confidence wavered, his once steadfast belief in rationality shaken to its core. As doors slammed shut and shadowy figures materialized out of thin air, he grasped desperately for logical explanations, only to find them slipping through his fingers like sand. I don't understand, he stammered, his voice trembling with uncertainty. This can't be real. There has to be some sort of explanation. But try as he might to cling to his disbelief, the evidence of the supernatural was undeniable. Sarah's footage captured the horrors that lurked within the abandoned hospital's shadowy corridors, while Jake's recordings captured the eerie sounds that echoed through the empty halls. As the night wore on and the hauntings grew more intense, Lance's panic reached a fever pitch. His once confident facade crumbled, revealing the terrified man beneath. He could feel the darkness closing in around him, suffocating and oppressive, threatening to swallow him whole. And then, in a moment of sheer terror, Lance found himself face to face with the true horrors that lurked within the abandoned hospital's walls. As shadowy figures loomed in the darkness and disembodied voices whispered his name, he knew that his rational explanations had failed him, leaving him at the mercy of forces beyond his comprehension. In that moment, Lance realized that he was no longer in control of his own fate. He was just another lost soul, trapped in the endless corridors of the abandoned hospital, at the mercy of the malevolent entities that called it home. As the crew's nightmare unfolded within the abandoned hospital, they found themselves ensnared in a desperate struggle for survival against the malevolent entities that haunted its halls. With each passing moment, the darkness seemed to tighten its grip, driving them to the brink of madness as they fought tooth and nail for their freedom. It started with a frantic dash down the dimly lit corridors, their footsteps echoing off the walls as they fled from the unseen horrors that pursued them. Sarah, the fearless camerawoman, stumbled over debris in her haste, her heart pounding in her chest as she struggled to keep pace with the others. Jake, the skeptical sound technician, clutched his EVP recorder like a lifeline, his eyes wide with terror as he scanned the darkness for any sign of danger. But no matter how fast they ran, the malevolent entities seemed to be always one step ahead, their presence looming ever closer with each passing moment. As they reached a dead end, panic set in, threatening to overwhelm them as they realized that they were trapped like rats in a maze. But even in the face of despair, they refused to give up hope, clinging to the faint glimmer of possibility that lay just beyond their reach. With their backs against the wall, they fought back with everything they had, using whatever makeshift weapons they could find to fend off their spectral assailants. But the entities were relentless, their ethereal forms slipping through their fingers like smoke as they closed in for the kill. In the end, it was sheer luck that saved them, a chance encounter with a hidden passage that led them to safety, just as all hope seemed lost. As they stumbled out into the cold night air, battered and bruised but alive, they knew that they had narrowly escaped the clutches of death. But even as they caught their breath and counted their blessings, they couldn't shake the feeling that they had left a part of themselves behind in the abandoned hospital's dark and twisted corridors. For in the end, they had faced horrors beyond their wildest imagination, and emerged forever changed by the experience. Amidst the chaos and terror of their ordeal, moments of bravery and sacrifice emerged among the crew members of spectral encounters, illuminating the darkness with flickers of hope and courage. Sarah, the intrepid camerawoman, displayed unwavering bravery as she stood her ground in the face of unimaginable horrors, her camera capturing every chilling moment with steady hands and unwavering determination. Despite her fear, she never once wavered in her commitment to documenting the truth, even as the malevolent entities closed in around her. Jake, the skeptical sound technician, demonstrated remarkable courage as he put himself in harm's way to protect his fellow crew members. With his quick thinking and resourcefulness, he fashioned makeshift weapons out of whatever he could find, using them to fend off their spectral assailants and buy precious moments of time for the others to escape. But perhaps the truest act of bravery came from Lance Preston himself, the charismatic host whose skepticism had been shattered by the horrors he faced. In a moment of selflessness, he sacrificed his own safety to ensure the survival of his crew, leading them to safety through the darkest depths of the abandoned hospital, despite the overwhelming odds stacked against them. Together, they faced the terrors that lurked within the shadows with unwavering courage and resolve, each one willing to lay down their lives for the sake of the others. And though they emerged battered and bruised, they did so with their spirits unbroken and their bond stronger than ever before. For in the crucible of fear and despair, they had discovered the true meaning of courage. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to confront it head-on, to stand together in the face of unimaginable adversity, and to emerge victorious against all odds. Lance Preston, the charismatic host of Spectral Encounters, underwent a profound transformation from skeptic to terrified believer as the horrors of the abandoned hospital unfolded before his eyes. What had begun as a quest to debunk the supernatural had turned into a harrowing ordeal that shattered his confidence and left him grappling with the terrifying truth of the unknown. As doors slammed shut and shadowy figures materialized in the darkness, Lance's once unwavering skepticism crumbled like a house of cards, replaced by a bone-deep fear that gnawed at his very soul. With each new manifestation of the supernatural, his rational explanations faltered, leaving him adrift in a sea of uncertainty. I don't understand, he stammered, his voice trembling with fear. This can't be real. There's no rational explanation for this. But try as he might to cling to his disbelief, the evidence of the supernatural was overwhelming. Sarah's footage captured the horrors that lurked within the abandoned hospital's shadowy corridors, while Jake's recordings captured the eerie sounds that echoed through the empty halls. As the night wore on and the hauntings grew more intense, Lance's panic reached a fever pitch. His once confident facade crumbled, revealing the terrified man beneath. He could feel the darkness closing in around him, suffocating and oppressive, threatening to swallow him whole. And then, in a moment of sheer terror, Lance came face to face with the true horrors that lurked within the abandoned hospital's walls. As shadowy figures loomed in the darkness and disembodied voices whispered his name, he knew that his rational explanations had failed him, leaving him at the mercy of forces beyond his comprehension. In that moment, Lance realized that he was no longer in control of his own fate. He was just another lost soul, trapped in the endless corridors of the abandoned hospital, at the mercy of the malevolent entities that called it home. And though he emerged from the ordeal battered and bruised, he did so with a newfound respect for the supernatural and the terrifying power it held over the world. The aftermath of the crew's harrowing experience in the abandoned hospital left them grappling with the trauma of what they had endured, their lives forever changed by the horrors they had faced. As they emerged from the darkness, battered and bruised but alive, they found themselves haunted by the memories of the malevolent entities that lurked within the shadows. Sarah, the intrepid camerawoman, struggled to sleep at night, her dreams haunted by the eerie whispers and shadowy figures that had plagued their journey. Despite her best efforts to move on, the scars of their ordeal lingered, a constant reminder of the horrors they had faced. Jake, the skeptical sound technician, found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about the world, his once steadfast belief in rationality shaken to its core. No longer content to dismiss the supernatural as mere superstition, he delved deeper into the mysteries of the unknown, searching for answers to the questions that haunted his every waking moment. And as for Lance Preston, the charismatic host whose skepticism had been shattered by the horrors he faced, he found himself at a crossroads. Despite his newfound respect for the supernatural, he struggled to come to terms with the trauma of their ordeal, grappling with the knowledge that some mysteries were better left unsolved. As they returned to their normal lives, the crew found themselves confronted with a choice: to bury the memories of their harrowing experience and move on, or to embrace the darkness and continue their pursuit of the unknown. And though they each chose their own path, they knew that their lives would never be the same again. As for the future of the show, it remained uncertain. The crew had captured footage of the supernatural that was beyond anything they had ever encountered, but whether they would ever be able to share it with the world remained to be seen. For in the end, some truths were too terrifying to be revealed, and some mysteries were better left unsolved. As the tale of the crew's harrowing experience draws to a close, a lingering sense of unease and uncertainty about the true nature of the paranormal pervades the air. Despite their best efforts to rationalize away the inexplicable events they witnessed, the horrors they faced in the abandoned hospital defy easy explanation, leaving the audience questioning the limits of their understanding of the world. For in the darkness that lurks beyond the realm of the known, there are mysteries that defy logic and reason, secrets that elude even the most intrepid of explorers. And though the crew emerged from their ordeal battered and bruised, their spirits forever scarred by the terrors they faced, they left behind a legacy of uncertainty that lingers like a ghost in the night. As the audience reflects on the events that unfolded within the abandoned hospital's shadowy corridors, they are left with a profound sense of unease, a nagging suspicion that there are forces at work in the world that defy their comprehension.